If you are a photographer today who understands light and you understand the mechanics of photography and you are even applying the rules of composition to your work, but you still can't break through, if you're struggling to repeat your handful of successes, or you're struggling to consistently exploit emotional intent in your work, well, as strange as it may sound, the rules of composition are very likely your Achilles heel. And probably after today's conversation, I may very well be making more enemies than friends. David Bowie and Andy Warhol, a famous musician and legendary artist, were absolutely right. According to them, everybody, including every photographer watching this, has it in them to be a hero for one day, or as Warhol claimed, just for 15 minutes. In music, we call this the one-hit wonder, a band that records one song that is absolutely mind-blowing, top of the pops, award-winning, but then they never record another. So why? Why could they not repeat the magic? Well, I certainly don't know, and maybe one would never know. But I do know this: the visual art of photography is very similar. If you're a photographer trying to navigate your way through composition, trying to get your work to a place where you are not only seen but truly acknowledged, if you want to express genuine originality in your work, then this video is for you. And I promise you, after today's discussion, whether you agree with me or not, by the end of this discussion, you will never consider composition in the same way again. And probably after today's conversation, I may very well be making more enemies than friends. But even if this is just for me, even if this discussion is just for me to get it off my chest, I'm okay with that. Because today I'm going to talk about the rules of composition. What I'm going to share with you today is not the normal. It's not a revision or an adaptation on the rules. And I'm not going to show you a whole lot of applicable photographs and then point out to you how the rules work. And neither am I going to say something that I see on this channel all the time, the sort of headline that says, just do this one thing and you'll be a compositional hero overnight. None of this. Instead, I'm going to give you solid, artistic, medical, and scientific facts that I believe are fundamental before you even start making a composition. In fact, before you even pick up a camera. This is going to be a deep, foundational discussion in composition. And should you agree with me at the end, I have prepared a full transcript, a PDF document that I'll give you access to. And I'll discuss how you can get access at the end of the video. And I must also mention, it's probably not a good idea just to jump ahead and to try to download the document without explanation. Because believe me, today I have a lot of explaining to do. In my 40 years of fine art photography and teaching, I promise you I have seen many photographers' portfolios. And unfortunately, a large majority of what I see only has a couple of hero images in their portfolio, a handful at most. You say, really, Martin? Are you sure? Yes, I am. You see, not only did I have the privilege of teaching and mentoring photographers and exhibiting photographic artists for my entire career, but I also have a number of physical galleries where we receive portfolio submissions on a weekly basis. And I can tell you very, very few portfolios are worthwhile considering. Most submissions have a handful of great works, highly presentable, packed with the wow factor, even saleable. And yet the rest of the portfolio is mere fillers. And I'm sure you will appreciate it that it is very difficult for a gallery to represent an artist without substance or depth. One has to ask the question, as difficult as it is, why is it that so many portfolios don't measure up? Is it because a photographer happened to stumble upon the right light at the right time and the composition sort of panned out for them? And if so, how could we explain this scenario in a positive way? Is there a way we can do it, or a way we can put it? Do we put it down to quality, not quantity? Does it simply take patience and perseverance, or good fortune? Or is this in fact the norm? I mean, are the statements that David Bowie and Andy Warhol made about being a hero for a day actually correct? Well, it's impossible for me not to sound harsh here, but honestly, if a photographer can only take a few great images within an entire portfolio, then something is not right. And I fear that if you are a photographer today who understands light and you understand the mechanics of photography, and you are even applying the rules of composition to your work, but you still can't break through, if you're struggling to repeat your handful of successes, or you're struggling to consistently exploit emotional intent in your work, well, as strange as it may sound, the rules of composition are very likely your Achilles heel. You see, in today's competitive world of photographic imagery, I would argue that the audience you may be seeking may not be that interested in following a photographer who gets lucky once or twice. Once they connect with your work, they are going to expect more. You say, no, Martin, this is not important to me. I don't care about what people say. Well, I think that's nonsense. So then, who exactly are you photographing for? I mean, that's the big question, and one I'd like to talk about today. You see, success follows when a photographic artist consistently creates masterpieces month after month, year after year, throughout their entire career. And that's the separation from the masses. You say, well, I'm just a serious amateur photographer, so it doesn't really matter that much to me. Really? Are you saying you don't care about what people think of your work? No, I don't believe that either. Today I'm going to show you why. The rules of composition, the very thing that most serious photographers strive to master, is more than likely the very thing holding you back from consistent, emotive expression. Now, I must warn you, if you've been doing photography for a while, but you are still struggling and honest enough to admit it, then this is probably a conversation that you would want to hear. And if you are just starting out in photography and you have great ambitions, then this is a conversation I think you must hear. Let's take a step back and let me explain my motivation for this video, my rave, if you will. I've been spending some time checking over photography conversations on this very platform. The other day, I typed in the words composition in photography just to see what's available. Now I'm being fed with video after video on the rules of composition. One rule of composition you must never break, or just do this and your composition will be fantastic. And you know what concerns me? What concerns me is that I see so many videos punting the rules of composition as if it's a magic bullet, the secret to instant success. And I was amazed at how many of these videos gets hundreds and thousands, if not millions of views, which tells me one thing. There is a genuine desire by photographers to learn about composition, and that's a good thing. And while I must admit there's some really good content out there made by really good photographers and teachers, most of what I saw falls well short of explaining the whole picture. They often start with the rules, all beautifully numbered 1 to whatever, very often like a hit parade. And although there is some good advice, I will admit that, in most cases, the advice is far from complete. And I hate to say it, but in certain videos, the advice is flatly incorrect. I think this comes from regurgitated information, which is understandable on a platform like this, where competition for views is intense and clickbait is high on the agenda to rake in the views. Look, let me be frank with you today. If you believe that a handful of rules, like the rule of thirds, the leading lines, the golden ratio, to name but a few, is the whole story in composition, then I'm afraid you've been fed a lie. And this is where, in my opinion, your creative soul is more than likely going to stagnate. Why? Because if you follow a couple of rules in composition repeatedly, day in and day out, you are heading straight for predictability. You are bound to produce work that is nice, granted. But in the world of high-end photographic imagery and the competition for acknowledgement, nice is a death sentence. Nice simply means it's been seen before, considered for a second, and quickly forgotten. You see, the very term rule already sets the tone. Why? Because a rule is binding. Rules have strict lanes and tight boundaries. So then this leads on to the obvious question. Do these compositional rules actually work? And yeah, I'd have to say, yes. Yes, of course they do. You cannot argue against this. They've been passed down through the centuries in art. They've been spoken about and used in photography since the early 1900s. They are safe, they are tried, they are tested. They are basically color in between the lines instructions, and yes, they do work. So then, are the rules really beneficial, or can they be ignored? Well, again, I'd have to say yes, they are beneficial. But no, I would not recommending just ignoring them. They are foundational, but they are not the be-all and end-all of photographic art. Definitely not. Why? Because, as I've said, if used often enough, they are predictable. So can we then break the rules, I hear you ask? And again, I would say yes, you can. But without knowledge and experience, knowing exactly why you're breaking it and what the effect you want to achieve is, you are going to break them at your own peril. But let's come back to the very word rule for a moment. In the real world, rules aren't actually made to be broken. If you don't like a rule, you can have it changed. You would need to convene a meeting with the elite society of compositional lawmakers, and then you would need to put it to vote. And if the law was updated or changed, well, a new law comes in, and that too should not be broken. Let me tell you a story to illustrate what I'm saying. Many years ago, I was lecturing a full-time photography class on this very topic, except I was talking about the rules of composition, introducing them, and then going on to explain why I prefer to call them guidelines. As I started the lecture, one of my students, who will remain nameless, just jumped up and started to walk out. I said to him, "Where are you going?" And he said, "I don't want to be tainted by the rules of composition." I said, "Why not?" And he said, "Because I have bigger plans. I'm going to rewrite the history books of composition. I am going to be a revolutionary. This is my calling." Now, I must admit I admired his gusto, but I said to him, If indeed you are going to be a revolutionary, don't you think it is a good strategy to stay and learn about what you are going to revolt against in the future before you head off on this quest? Well, he thought about it for a moment and then said, "You have a point," and sat down. You see, ignorance is an artist's worst enemy. Rules are like a cookbook. They'll keep you safe from kitchen disasters, but do master chefs generally work out of a cookbook? No, I think not. So then, what is the answer? Well, let's start here. Let's start with what I call a biological mandate. Before you even pick up your camera, I want you to answer one simple question. The question came up before. Who are you indeed creating for? Who indeed is going to enjoy your photography? And the answer cannot be for me. That, in my opinion, is just dodging the question. That's an easy way out. Photographic artists should never practice in isolation in any case. It completely defeats the point. I mean, photography really, it's a visual art form that needs an audience. So if it's not for yourself, who indeed are you creating for? Are you creating for an algorithm, perhaps? Images that perform well on social media like Instagram and Pinterest? Are you creating for an alien? I mean, in today's crazy world, are you creating for a robot? Or even worse, having a robot create on your instruction? I mean, that's a big question and definitely a discussion for another day. Or are you indeed creating for a human being? Without doubt, I believe this is where all composition must start. It must start by you understanding your audience. You see, as photographic artists, we shoot subjects in a three-dimensional world, a living, breathing reality. And then with the click of a shutter, we compress that reality instantaneously into 2 dimensions. And in the process, we lose the physical depth of reality. So why does this matter? Because again, in my opinion, all humans, the very audience that you will be serving and yourself suffer from what I call Superman syndrome. What is Superman syndrome? Well, it is the delusion that we, all human beings, including myself, can see the entire world in sharp focus at once. Well, fellow humans, ladies and gentlemen, I have news for you. We cannot. Superman syndrome does not only apply to photographers and photographic art, it's physically life-threatening beyond photography. I mean, think of the road accidents which have increased worldwide, caused by texting. And why do they happen? Because we as humans believe we can see the text on our screen, concentrate on what we are typing, and we can keep an eye on the road at the same time. Well, I'm afraid we cannot. Biologically, we only have a tiny spotlight of sharp focus. It's called Foveal vision. Everything else is a peripheral blur, a visual suggestion, if you like. Our eyes move rapidly in jerky, responsive jumps. I mean, look it up. It's called saccadic eye movement. Think of someone who's behind a searchlight, scanning the dark, stopping and starting as they're looking for things. Our vision works something like this. Razor-sharp center area. Wherever we look comes into immediate focus, and surrounding it is a peripheral blur. The human eye is incredible in so many respects. I mean, including in the way the human eye interprets color through the brain. But this is also just a mere suggestion in its own right. But today, let's, excuse the pun, hone in on focus. Let me give you a real-life example. Just before payday, we can choose to look at the transactions on our bank statement without looking at the final balance. And the two columns are like right next to one another. You can check whether your money has been paid in, but you can choose not to look at the balance until it has. Look, if you are human and you think you are an exception to this biological rule, then try this little exercise with me right now. It's important, so try it. Never before has seeing become believing. Just hold out your hand like that. Open up your fingers like that and look at the lifeline or stare at the lifeline on the palm of your hand. And while you're staring at the lifeline, can you see the background clearly? Now, don't lift your eyes, stare at the lifeline. Don't move your eyes. Just answer the question, is the background blurred? Now I'd like you to lift your eyes and look through to the background. And suddenly the background will become sharp and your palm of your hand will blur. Now do this exercise a number of times and you will see it happens very quickly, almost instantaneously. We are not even aware of it happening. And this is my theory on Superman syndrome. If you don't understand how to manage this biological spotlight in your composition, I really cannot see how you will ever be consistent as a photographic artist. This is so important before any rule of composition applies. If you ignore your audience's biological DNA and your own DNA when you are composing, at best you will be an innocent bystander. You'll be handing over your composition to the lottery of your viewer's eye. If you allow your viewer's eye to wander towards that bright cloud off in the background, or that piece of graffiti on a side wall, or that traffic light that is shouting louder than the reason why you took the picture in the first place, then you haven't factored in this biological management, either in camera while making the composition or in processing. You have lost the battle before you've even started. And it does not matter which rule of composition you pin your hopes on. Even if the rules are packaged and wrapped in a box with a bow and it comes with a card promising you success, compositional rules are not going to rescue your photograph from this dilemma. And as I have mentioned, this management doesn't stop at the shutter. It follows through to the developing process. And here I'm not talking about editing pixels. I'm not talking about powerful image editors like Photoshop and GIMP and Infinity Photo. I'm talking about controlling the final rendition in a non-destructive environment. I'm talking about processing the raw file, today's modern digital darkroom in software like Adobe Camera Raw, Adobe Lightroom and Capture One as an example. Knowing what to do in camera and in processing afterwards to ensure that the viewer's eye goes exactly where you intended and nowhere else is one of the big secrets. And I'm afraid it even goes deeper. Superman syndrome is also the culprit for one of the most common mistakes of all. I call it visual indigestion. It's about avoiding clutter in your photography at all costs. Isn't it funny? I've noticed when you give an untrained photographer a camera and then you zoom the lens in tight on a subject and you ask them to take a picture, you'll notice the first action they'll take is to zoom out if they know how to do that, or if they don't, they'll take a few steps backwards. And when you ask them, why did you do that? Why did you zoom out or why did you walk backwards? They'll say something like, to get the whole picture in. They want to make sure they get in everything. And this is because they are so focused on that one individual point through the viewfinder or in live view, doesn't matter. They are so focused on that one individual point that they are not seeing the composition in its entirety. I also see something similar when I'm evaluating a busy composition with a student and I ask them, why so busy? They'll say something like, because I want to tell the whole story. You see, off the record, I think that Superman vision has been given to us by design. Now, this is my theory, so please take it from where it comes. But I think that Foveal vision has been specifically designed to help us cope with mass stimuli, mass information. I mean, imagine if we could see all things at once in focus and also concentrate on all of these focus spots that we're seeing. I think our brains would have to be much bigger than what we have in order to be able to process that sort of information. I mean, imagine what we would look like. Huge heads on small bodies. I see some of you smiling because you're seeing exactly what I'm seeing. We'd look something like the aliens that are portrayed in movies. And while we are on this point, I must also tell you that humans are inherently lazy viewers. The harder a human has to work to understand your composition, the quicker they will lose interest. A human will only give you a couple of seconds of grace to retain their attention. If you do not deliver the point quickly and hold their eye there for a minute and then give them some mystery, they will just move on. That's why busy compositions are just so ineffective. Let me give you an analogy of what I call visual indigestion. I want you to imagine you're going out to a world-class restaurant with some good friends. And you've been there before, so you know what to expect. So you starve yourself for the day because you want to be hungry for the experience. You want to make sure it's worth your while. So you finally sit down at the table and your anticipation is high. So here's the question. What is the best part of the meal? Do you think it's the starter? Do you think it's the main course or the dessert? Now, I would argue it's the starter. Why? Because the starter satisfies your hunger just enough, but you still know there's a lot more coming. Or as one of my students one day said to me, Martin, no, it's not the starter. It's the hot bread rolls and butter that you get in the beginning. And you know, thinking about it, I'd have to agree with her. Okay, now I want you to imagine now that you've given your order and now the waiter turns up and puts down the hot bread rolls, the butter, the starter, the main course, the dessert, the wine, the coffee, all down on the table at once, and then says, enjoy. Will you be paying by card or cash? Now you laugh, but that's exactly what we do with composition. And it's because of Foveal vision. We're so focused on one individual point, we forget about all the rest. Why? Because we only look at one element at a time, both when taking the photograph and when viewing. Both us, the photographer, and our audience suffer from the same issue. If we don't take the time to scan every corner of the composition first, and then we go ahead and present unprocessed pictures, we should not wonder why our audience is underwhelmed, why they don't get it. Serving up visual indigestion will give the human viewing your composition every reason to move on without paying the bill. You see, a masterpiece with great composition and mystery, it needs to lie down quietly and just behave itself. The composition needs to rather entice the viewer in and gracefully unveil its mystery. So from today, one thing that I would like you to start doing, especially if you're battling with your composition, stop trying to tell the whole story when you make a composition. You as the artist must start the story and then respect your viewer's ability and integrity by letting their imagination complete it. Mystery and simplicity are powerful elements. Pursue them at all costs. Even before you now consult any rule or any guideline. To emphasize my point, and certainly to come back to what David Bowie and Andy Warhol had to say about being famous for a day, I recall somebody once telling me that they had the privilege of attending an exhibition in New York by the great Henri Cartier-Bresson, one of the greatest photographers of all time, and certainly one of my mentors. And he was showcasing a retrospective of his finest works. It was a late career exhibition. Apparently he was asked how he felt seeing his finest work on show in one space. And he said he felt humbled, but he also said it was a strange feeling because looking at his lifetime of work and considering the shutter speeds that he captured them at, he said somewhere around sort of 1/60th of a second, he worked it out and said, "You're probably looking at the top 5 seconds of my life." Well, that's quite deep, but you see, quality will always overpower quantity. Really, as a photographer wanting to do the best you can do, a handful of 1/60th of a second over a lifetime is not enough. You're going to have to do far better than that. Lead the viewer's eye to where the story begins and let them pick it up from there. And I promise you, you will know when you've nailed it. How? Because humans have a strange way of acknowledging your work. I don't know if you've noticed, but I see this in our art gallery on a daily basis. When a person walks in and they really connect with a photographic piece, they will either start asking questions or they're going to start making statements. So they will say something like, where is this? Or if it's an abstract, what is this? Or they will say something like, this photograph really speaks to me. Or they will say, I could look at this all day long. And sometimes, and this is my favorite, they will look at the photograph and then they will look at you and they will say, did you really take this? As if they don't believe you could. I think this is the ultimate compliment. And let's go even deeper. Compositional rules are only the start. Once you've taken care of simplicity, once you have managed the human visual system, there are many more tools available for you on the workbench to be able to create great compositions or to support your composition. Powerful tools that work in tandem with the rules or could even replace them entirely. Considerations like compositional format. As you pick up the camera before you even start, whether you're choosing horizontal composition or a vertical composition, or you're thinking of working panoramic or even square, each format elicits a different response. Horizontal is more peaceful, vertical is more powerful and abrupt and to the point. And at the same time, you can choose whether you're going to be shooting with a straight horizon or askew. Again, each will deliver a different message. Format leads and works hand in hand with visual communication, asking yourself the really important question, what do you want to say? Or probably as important, what should the viewer feel? This involves choices with camera angle, lens distortion, lens compression, depth of field, and then focus. And here we could talk about in focus, selected focus, or even, believe it or not, out of focus, which could imply dreams or bring forth an impressionistic narrative. And then you can harness the power of visual design using tools like geometric shape, lines, rhythm, pattern, texture, balance, symmetry, asymmetry, all of this. And then finally, you can even look at the psychology in color. So I'm not talking about just the color here, I'm talking about the color cast itself. So for example, if you work with a green cast, it could feel refreshing and new, or depending on your subject, it could feel nauseating and threatening. All a matter of choice. All of these, and in no particular order, the rules of composition, visual design, camera format, visual communications, and the psychology in color all work together to create a symphony within the composition. And this, my friends, is how you produce an album, a portfolio that has impact, a consistent workflow with hits one after the other. What's the analogy? The strings in the orchestra sound nice on their own. The brass section sounds nice on its own. Even the sound that comes from that little triangle sounds very pleasant and nice on its own. The rules of composition are also nice on their own. But if you want the composition to sing, you need to conduct the orchestra with harmony and intent. Sometimes the rules won't even feature. Other times they'll be foundational. And from time to time, they may very well be the hero. I mean, have you ever seen a photograph that defies every rule, yet it works beautifully? That's because the conductor chose a different harmony, an unusual combination, but with knowledge and experience using a combination of these tools. You see, fellow photographic artists, ladies and gentlemen, this is what makes art. Today I've given you an overview of my theory, and believe me, we have only just scratched the surface. This type of teaching honestly deserves a classroom and invested time. And I must apologize for this discussion coming across as a bit of a rave, something I felt needed to be said. But now that I've got it off my chest, I must tell you that while I was preparing for this discussion, I am considering a series of videos to unpack each of these categories a little bit further: rules, guidelines, visual communication, visual design, color, psychology, etc. But I'll only do it if you, my channel subscribers and viewers, feel that it will be of benefit to you. Let me know in the comments below if you are interested, and I'll make the time to record. And of course, if you stayed till the end and this discussion has, excuse the pun, but struck a chord, and you want to start learning advanced photography and advanced composition sooner, then connect with me at the Art Photography Academy. Our online academy is where real artistic transformation happens quickly. And what's great about it is that you can start today. I'll also put the details in below for you. And as promised, I'll also include a link where you can download the full transcript of today's discussion if you found it of benefit. Regardless, please leave a comment, share your thoughts around this fascinating subject, share your struggles and your successes. Now that you've seen the other layers, the biology and the psychology that work together hand in hand with the rules of composition, I want to hear from you. Which of these layers resonate with you the most today? Let's continue this discussion in the comments below. And also, I welcome comments should you disagree. Only one request: if you disagree, please leave more than a one-liner. Please don't just say things like rubbish or utter nonsense and just leave it at that. If you disagree, please tell us why, or tell me why. We can all learn from each other. So in summary, here's the question: are you a rule follower or are you a visual composer? Do you subscribe to the law, or do you respect the law and embrace grace? As Ansel Adams said, it is the human behind the camera who creates the picture. But after today's discussion, we can add a human who composes photographs for other humans to enjoy, not just with rules, but with the whole orchestra of a visual symphony. Remember, if you want to stay informed about videos and talks just like this, then please subscribe to the Osner Studio Atelier. Again, you'll find all the details below. If you found this talk beneficial, please could I ask you to do me a favor and just like and subscribe to my channel. Let's walk this creative journey together. Until next time, cheers for now.